So your relationship is in trouble. One or both of you are thinking about breaking up or getting a divorce. The big fights have slowed down to just being tons of little fights over and over. And while resentment so high that it seems impossible to get over, it also feels impossible to just get your needs met. They seem completely incapable of giving you your needs, and you seem incapable of giving them their needs. You've tried all the communication strategies. You've tried to go to couples counseling. You've tried to learn each other's love languages. You've tried to improve your sex life. On and on it goes, and yet none of it really seems to help. What you probably don't realize is that you are in stage 2 of your relationship, and at least 90% of all relationships fail during this stage. And there are 3 stages. And you might even look back at the beginning of your relationship a little bit confused, which is natural because it was great in the beginning. It might have even felt like a fairy tale, and yet how could it fall apart and come to this years later? Well, let's break down the stages of relationships so that you can get past stage 2 and make it to stage 3 and not fail like everybody else. Stage 1 is the honeymoon stage of the relationship. This is where it's amazing. You guys are excited, you're learning about each other and feeling each other for the first time. You're having lots of exciting dates and conversations. You're having lots of sex, lots of laughs. It's just a good time, one after the other. It's like the best high you'll ever have naturally. But this is also the stage where you are wearing a mask and your partner is wearing a mask, and you are filtering yourself and only showing the best parts to each other. This is also the stage of the relationship where it's the lowest risk. In fact, that's exactly what gets you out of stage 1, is when that risk starts to increase. And that risk increases when you start to make commitment towards each other. That commitment can look like saying, I love you, or it can look like moving in or getting married. Either way, there is some clear commitment that progresses it to a serious relationship. And as soon as it starts to gain serious, it starts moving you into the stage 2 of the relationship. And that stage of the relationship is what I call the relationship loop of doom. And when you start to get into the loop of doom, what happens is that all of your unconscious, unresolved inner child wounds and childhood traumas come roaring up to the surface. And it starts something like this. One of the partners, let's just say the husband, for this example, is stressed out at work. Maybe he's made a mistake or the business is not doing well, and he's feeling a core wound of failure and not feeling good enough. And what he's going to do with that is cope with those core wounds, and what he will automatically try to do is soothe those core wounds, which are his coping strategies. And that might look like shutting down, getting quiet, not communicating, distracting himself with work, distracting himself with even more work, or sports, or video games, or friends, just shutting down, distracting, and not connecting with the other partner. And I want you to pay attention here is that he's trying to soothe the pain. But what is that going to do instead? When he starts to cope in these ways, it's going to disconnect him from his partner, and that's going to start to trigger her core wounds. She's going to start to feel alone, abandoned, neglected, not important to him. And with her core wounds, she's going to cope with those core wounds as well. And the only way that she knew how growing up, she's going to get loud. She's going to get critical and start pointing out all the things that he's doing wrong. She's going to get demanding and try to get him to do more things with her, pointing out things that nitpicking at him to force his attention back onto her, which is really just a cry for help and a poor attempt to try to soothe these core emotional wounds. But what is it going to do instead? That's right, it's going to trigger his core wounds even more. So her trying to soothe her wounds through automatic coping responses has the opposite effect. It's going to trigger him more naturally. And what is it going to trigger? More of his core wounds of feeling like a failure, feeling like he's not enough, and he's going to cope even harder. So he's going to shut down more, withdraw more, distract more, even perhaps labeling her as ridiculous and too much and unreasonable, and that's just going to trigger her more. So you can see already this loop of doom already happening. And so it's a trap for as long as they are unable to face their core wounds and they do their automatic coping responses, which they learn from childhood. The coping that they're trying to do is not an attempt to hurt the other person. They're trying to soothe their pain, but it does the opposite and triggering the other person. And this vicious cycle will not stop. They'll fight each other again and again and again until it turns into a huge blowout fight. They might try to sweep it under the rug and try to move on from it and pretend it's not there, but then it's going to happen again. Maybe weeks later or months later, the same thing happens again. They fight again, it blows up, and we come to exactly this same spot. Again, questioning if this relationship is working for them, questioning if they are even compatible with each other, entertaining the idea of breaking up or getting divorced, and most likely following through with that, only to find another partner, going through the honeymoon stage, thinking that, oh, I finally found the one. You know, this was an upgrade from the last. And then the honeymoon stage fades, as it always does. And then they find themselves back into stage 2 again. And they will fail again if they do not do the healing work of their core childhood wounds and traumas. But you can get out of the stage. You do not have to fail like everybody else if you do the inner work. And what is that inner work? And that work is shadow work. It is somatic work, inner child work. It's really, in simple terms, facing and feeling and processing all of those core insecurities and emotional pains that get triggered in the relationship that have really been there your entire life. The relationship did not give you those wounds. The relationship triggered those wounds that were already there all along. And that actually turns into your gift once you become conscious that, oh, they touched something inside me that I get to actually explore. Even though it hurts like hell and I don't like it, I know I have to explore that. Maybe it's a core wound of abandonment. Maybe it's a core wound of not feeling good enough. Maybe it's a core wound of feeling controlled and a fear of losing your freedom. So on and so forth. Those are all your wounds that you have to face because they will just get carried with you into the next relationship again and again. But when you can build a relationship with those emotions, with the body and the nervous system, and you can learn to process them and release them one little layer at a time. It takes time. It's the most difficult but also the most important work of a lifetime. You can eventually begin to progress to stage 3. Now, stage 3 relationships are extremely rare. Most relationships do not make it to this stage. But what it looks like is that you shift your perspective. Instead of seeing the relationship as a source to soothe your childhood wounds, to get the needs that you did not get as a child, you see the relationship as an arena for deep emotional and spiritual growth to make you better through the challenges, through the differences. You don't try to expect your partner to think or feel exactly the way you feel. You appreciate their differences and you honor the challenge and the growth opportunities to be able to appreciate that even more. And yes, as you do the work, those emotional pains get smaller and smaller and they don't get triggered as frequently. And then you have a lot more consistent periods of peace and understanding and connection. The highs are not so high, the lows are not so low. If you can make it into this stage, you are in spiritual partnership, not treating your partner like a surrogate parent that has to make up for all of the unmet needs that you had growing up as a child. And this healing journey, helping individuals face themselves, process their core traumas, connect to the body, the inner child, and begin really deep healing work is a journey that I guide clients through. If you want to watch more videos on relationships and the healing journey, definitely follow me and subscribe for more.